Within the thousand-year-old grey stone corridors of Windsor Castle, silence has never carried a weight so formidable. This is no longer mere tabloid gossip or petty social media spats. This is an institutional execution fueled by the cold reality of forensic evidence and numbers that cannot lie. The dawn of February 4, 2026, brought more than just the piercing chill of a London winter. It carried an ironclad decree from Princess Anne: the crown never retreats. A meticulously engineered hoax known as the Yacht Baby was designed to strike at the very foundations of the House of Windsor, but the architects of this plot failed to anticipate the devastating power of transparency. In this moment of global upheaval, the world watched in awe as Prince Harry, the man who once surrendered everything for love, chose to stand with the light. In a final act of duty, he surrendered the evidence that would personally torch his bridge to the past: clandestine Delaware accounts, burner phones laden with encrypted codes. The veil over Archetype Consulting LLC has been shredded, exposing an extortion plot more ruthless than any Hollywood thriller. This is not merely a story of a royal divorce, it is a battle for the very soul and dignity of a dynasty. As DNA delivers its verdict and the money trail is unmasked, Meghan Markle's era at Windsor ends not with a simple filing for divorce, it ends with the total evaporation of a mirage. Welcome to the final chapter of a self-imploding empire. February 4, 2026, by the Royal Herald Desk. This is no longer a rumour. This is a direct strike at the dignity of the crown, Princess Anne declared this morning in an emergency statement issued from Gatcombe Park. With these piercing words, the Princess Royal broke the royal family's official silence following an explosive claim that has stunned the nation and rocked the House of Windsor from within. A young woman named Lindsay, aged 23, has emerged in central London, alleging she is the biological daughter of Prince Andrew and Meghan Markle, born from a purported secret liaison on a yacht in Nice, France in 2002, 19 years before Meghan officially joined the royal family. The scandalous claim first surfaced online in whispers on January 31st, but it wasn't until February 2nd, when leaked documents, including a birth certificate omitting the father's name, circulated on social media, that mainstream media caught wind of what many feared could become the monarchy's most damaging identity crisis in decades. At precisely 9 a.m. on February 4th, Princess Anne summoned press correspondents and key advisors for an extraordinary briefing. Calm but visibly stern, she addressed the cameras and announced, "I am appalled, not only by the gravity of these claims but by the reckless way they are being manipulated to erode the public's trust in the institution my family has sworn to serve." Without mentioning Meghan Markle directly by name, Anne confirmed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex had mutually decided to end their marriage in late January, a process already underway behind the scenes. However, in what she termed a transitional branding phase, the pair are still obligated to appear together in a handful of pre-existing brand commitments through the end of 2026, specifically those tied to commercial endorsements signed during their partnership. In a development that surprised many royal observers, Sophie Rhys-Jones, former wife of Prince Andrew and longtime figure of discretion, issued her own statement through legal intermediaries on February 2nd, acknowledging that she had heard rumours as early as 2004 about a possible relationship between Andrew and an American woman on the yacht circuit, in quote, "say to Stevity," end quote. However, Sophie was careful to add that the nature of that connection was unclear and may have been one-sided, with no confirmation that any romance took place. Nonetheless, her disclosure lent historic weight to what the palace is now treating as a credible enough claim to warrant thorough internal investigation. Princess Anne responded to Sophie's revelations during today's address. While these suggestions remain unverified and date back over 2 decades, their resurgence today, strategically and anonymously, raises the suspicion of coordinated disinformation meant to discredit not individuals, but the crown as a whole. Anne also warned the public and press not to fall prey to narrative entanglement, noting that false linkages between past and present can be weaponized to stir suspicion around prominent or vulnerable royal figures, including Prince Harry and Prince Andrew, both of whom are entangled in varying degrees of public distrust. But perhaps the most startling development came when Princess Anne publicly acknowledged a lead provided by Prince Harry himself, who, in a confidential memo sent on February 1st, shared concerns about a series of unaccounted financial transfers linked to a Delaware-based entity named Archetype Consulting LLC. The transfers, dating from early 2023 to January 2026, had been quietly funneled from the Sussexes' former charitable reserves. According to Anne's statement, the transactions included large cash withdrawals and wire transfers to anonymous legal consultants in London, some of which have now been traced to retainers and legal fees reportedly paid on behalf of Lindsay. These financial anomalies, lacking invoices or charitable reporting, triggered Anne's personal concern over possible misuse of philanthropic structures for non-charitable ends. She emphasized, any financial activities tangentially linked to charitable branding must adhere to the highest standard of transparency. When trust is violated, it is not just mismanagement, it becomes a threat to institutional credibility. In a rare moment of directness, Anne also commented on Meghan Markle's lack of public or private explanation, describing her behavior over the past week as strategically silent and procedurally evasive. And MoverFlex, multiple palace sources confirm that Meghan has neither denied the allegations nor cooperated with legal inquiries, and that personal belongings, including notebooks, hard drives, and communication devices, have allegedly been disposed of, including what staff described as a late-night bonfire of personal journals at the Monacato estate on the night of February 1. This silence has fueled rampant speculation and concern. When the reputation of a 1,000-year-old institution is at stake, Anne said, silence is no longer neutral, it is a message, and the monarchy will not be manipulated by silence. As of February 4th, internal investigation teams under the joint oversight of Princess Anne and Prince William have been activated, with forensic accountants, former intelligence analysts, and legal historians sifting through 20 years of data and press archives. Public reactions have ranged from disbelief to outrage, with calls for transparency swelling online. Yet, as Anne reminded the press corps, this is not just about scandal. This is about safeguarding the ethical perimeter of British constitutional life. The palace has confirmed that Prince William will release a separate statement on February 5th. Meanwhile, Lindsay remains under informal police surveillance at her hotel in Knightsbridge, as authorities await preliminary DNA screening results, expected no earlier than February 6th. The story is still unfolding, but one thing is clear: the Crown is not retreating, it is mobilizing. While public attention has fixated on the emotional and familiar implications of Lindsay's claim, a far more dangerous thread has emerged beneath the headlines, one that threatens to undermine financial transparency across royal-adjacent foundations. At the heart of this unraveling web is a Delaware-registered shell entity, Archetype Consulting LLC. According to investigators operating under Princess Anne's Crisis Oversight Committee, Archetype Consulting LLC was established in November 2022. Its registered agent is an obscure corporate services firm in Wilmington, Delaware, a jurisdiction known for its opaque incorporation laws and protection of beneficial owner anonymity. This company, which never publicly disclosed its links to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, has been identified as the financial origin of a series of untraceable transactions. The entity was structured as a consulting firm, but no client list, tax returns, or service contracts have been provided, noted a confidential financial auditor on the panel. Its only known financial activity, a suspicious pattern of large sum payments to a London-based legal firm now confirmed to be representing Lindsay. The payments began in March 2023, ramped up in July, and peaked again in January 2026, just days before Lindsay's sudden public emergence. The breakthrough came not from an MI6 tip-off, but from Prince Harry himself. On January 31st, just 2 days after the Lindsay rumours began to gain traction, Harry reportedly accessed an old burner phone stored in Meghan's locked private yoga studio, which he entered without her knowledge. Inside a hidden floor compartment, he discovered Western Union receipts, the burner device, and a printed bank routing slip marked Archetype. It was then, investigators say, that Harry began to piece together his possible unwitting role in financing the campaign. According to a source close to the Sussex household, Harry cross-referenced the burner phone records with joint tax documents filed in the United States in 2025, finding a match between Meghan's digital signature and the LLC registration. He did not confront her. Instead, he sent the findings to Princess Anne on the morning of February 1st with a single line of explanation. "I don't know what's happening, but I need to make this right. It's cleave certain routing." A critical point of inquiry now centres on whether funds from the Archewell Foundation, formerly co-run by Harry and Meghan, were diverted through Archetype Consulting LLC without full board authorisation. From May 2023 to December 2025, over $150,000 was withdrawn in cash across 3 international locations: Montecito, Toronto, and Paris, each tied to Meghan's travel logs. One senior investigator called it a laundering corridor, masquerading as a humanitarian vehicle, beloved solemnly in a command. What raises further concern is that none of these withdrawals were accompanied by verifiable charitable outputs, nor were they reflected in Archewell's quarterly public transparency disclosures. This is not an attack on charitable giving, Princess Anne said in her earlier statement, but a defense of integrity. The British public has the right to know how philanthropic funds intersect with royal narratives. Why did inquiries by royal forensic accountants also have revealed that Lindsay had been residing at the luxury Claridge's Hotel since mid-January? Her expenses, including legal retainers, stylists, and private car services, were paid for by an offshore intermediary linked directly to Archetype's bank accounts. Furthermore, a key data point emerged: a $50,000 transfer memo dated January 15th, labelled Project L Phase 2. When under fallen hour clause, that transfer happened 2 days before Lindsay arrived in London, suggesting premeditation, not spontaneous contact from a confused woman seeking identity closure. Royal investigators believe this memo was a code for the media rollout strategy, designed to coincide with growing public fatigue around traditional royal narratives and create maximum social disruption. Despite the overwhelming circumstantial evidence, the royal family has not directly accused Meghan Markle of criminal wrongdoing. This is by design. Our approach remains disciplined, said an internal advisor working under William's crisis command team. We are not interested in public character assassination. We are interested in preserving constitutional trust and exposing systemic manipulation. Number 4, the listed 1818. The palace maintains that it is still evaluating options regarding formal legal action, but will continue to cooperate with financial regulators, intelligence services, and the Crown Prosecution Service to determine the full extent of wrongdoing. As of February 4th, Princess Anne has frozen all access to royal-linked discretionary funds and requested an independent audit of any Sussex-related foundation accounts from 2022 onward. While the financial investigation intensified behind closed doors, the emotional and strategic fulcrum of the crisis came to rest on one man, Prince Andrew, Duke of York. By the morning of February 2nd, the pressure was no longer theoretical. His assets were frozen, his private security detail deactivated, and his long-protected financial autonomy reduced to zero. A silent war was now raging within the walls of Windsor, and it was being orchestrated with surgical precision by Princess Anne. The trigger came when Anne's investigation team discovered that one of the earliest international money transfers from Archetype Consulting LLC was routed through an account formerly associated with Andrew's dormant Monaco Trust, which had been used briefly between 2000 and 2004 during his now infamous Mediterranean yacht excursions. Though the account had long since been closed, its metadata matched with communication logs on Lindsay's burner phone, suggesting that someone had intentionally mirrored an old trail to anchor credibility into the hoax. That's when Anne knew Andrew had to be brought in, not as a suspect, but as a narrative lever. "This isn't just about truth," Anne reportedly told her private secretary. "It's about controlling the interpretation of that truth before someone else weaponizes it." In supply and quote, she ordered her team to deliver Andrew a private ultimatum at his Royal Lodge residence, the offer of a full financial protection plan for the rest of his life, but only if he signed a narrowly drafted affidavit admitting that he did, in fact, meet Meghan Markle in Nice in the summer of 2002. At 8:45 p.m. on February 2nd, Prince William personally arrived at Royal Lodge, accompanied by 2 royal legal advisors. He carried with him a folder stamped, "Classified Strategic Communication," end quote. Inside was a 2-page affidavit. The language was precise, avoiding moral judgment or romantic insinuation. It read, "I, Andrew Albert Christian Edward, confirm that in July 2002, during a private yachting event hosted in the port of Nice, I made the acquaintance of a then 21-year-old American woman named Rachel Meghan Markle. Our encounter was brief and informal. No contact continued beyond that summer. Number wheeler in people to about mate. But to sign that document would be to confirm what the public had long speculated, that Andrew had lied repeatedly to both Queen Elizabeth II and the public about ever knowing Meghan prior to Harry's relationship. It would cost him his reputation, but it could save the monarchy." Andrew sat in silence for nearly half an hour. Then, with shaking hands, he picked up the pen and signed. "He didn't even ask for a drink," said one royal aide present. "Just silence. My instant, he and me to this to be sex appeal." The moment Andrew's signature dried, Princess Anne activated Phase 2 of the strategy, a controlled leak to the Times disclosing the affidavit, not the scandal, not the DNA speculation, but the simple confirmation that Meghan and Andrew did meet in 2002. The effect was immediate and surgical. By midday on February 3, headlines dominated the UK press. Prince Andrew confirms connection to Meghan Markle in early 2002. The wording was deliberately ambiguous, but it gave public plausibility to Lindsay's claims, just enough to validate the hoax without conceding to its false conclusions. This was Princess Anne's trap. With Andrew's admission public, Meghan could no longer deny knowledge of him. If she tried to, the palace could refute it instantly. If she tried to pivot and say she had met him but never bore a child, her credibility would collapse under the weight of her own silence, her financial link to Lindsay, and the mounting forensic evidence. Then came Anne's final stroke of tactical brilliance. Rather than exposing Lindsay immediately as a fraud, she instructed MI6's quiet unit to allow the deception to continue a few more days. Surveillance was placed on Lindsay's legal team, communication lines monitored, and forensic accountants tracked real-time fund flows out of Archetype Consulting. The longer the play ran, the more threads unraveled, noted one investigator. By allowing Lindsay's team to believe the scandal was working, especially after Andrew's admission, Anne was able to gather critical metadata, timestamps, and additional beneficiaries. More importantly, it gave Prince William's office the legal clarity to prepare a statement to the press, framing the incident not as a scandal of royal blood, but a calculated fraud and extortion attempt orchestrated from outside the monarchy's jurisdiction. And at the centre of the web, not a victim but an architect, was Meghan Markle. But no accusations would be made. Not yet. As Princess Anne was heard telling William behind closed doors that night, "Let them write their final chapter, then we'll publish the truth." As February unfolded and tensions surrounding the Lindsay scandal reached a fever pitch, Prince William stepped forward, not as a figurehead, but as a strategist. It was no longer enough for the monarchy to remain reactive. The public required clarity, the Crown demanded order, and the media, hungry and volatile, needed to be brought under disciplined control. On the morning of February 3rd, while Princess Anne oversaw the final intelligence sweep on Lindsay's communications, Prince William summoned the editors-in-chief of the 5 largest UK newspapers to a private, off-the-record crisis session at Kensington Palace. The mission was surgical: reframe the story before it metastasized into a constitutional meltdown. The meeting occurred at exactly 10:15 a.m. in a secure wing of Kensington, rarely used for non-diplomatic purposes. No press cameras, no notes permitted. Mobile devices were confiscated at the door. Only the editors, William, his senior aide Sir Julian Marrow, and a digital forensics advisor were present. On the wall-size projector screen were 2 documents side by side: a certified forensic DNA report obtained via discrete collection of hair samples from Lindsay's hotel room, the conclusive statement no biological match with either Prince Andrew or Miss Meghan Markle, and a sequence of bank statements highlighting $150,000 in wire transfers from Archetype Consulting LLC to the legal office of Lindsay's representation. The source was listed as a fund directly controlled by Meghan Markle, verified via IP logs, and a Wilmington-based registration agent. William did not open the meeting with platitudes. Instead, he reportedly said, "This is not a romantic scandal. This is a structured attempt to extort the Crown using falsified identity, stolen heritage, and financial subterfuge." What followed was a 30-minute walkthrough of the key timelines, evidence chains, and digital validation that discredited every central claim made by Lindsay, and, by extension, the narrative pushed quietly through anonymous online networks weeks earlier. William concluded with a chilling directive: "Tomorrow you will not report gossip, you will report a criminal conspiracy. And you will do so knowing that your cooperation restores public truth, not royal privilege." At 8:00 a.m. on February 4th, all 5 major outlets, The Times, The Telegraph, Daily Mail, The Guardian and The Sun, released synchronized front-page coverage of the findings. Headlines varied in tone but delivered a unified message: royal hoax exposed, DNA results, confirm Lindsay's claims were fabricated. $150K payment tied to Meghan Markle's shell company sparks extortion probe. No blood, no bond. Palace releases conclusive evidence against Lindsay's allegations. Each article emphasized 3 foundational truths. Lindsay had no biological connection to Prince Andrew or Meghan Markle. Her legal efforts were entirely funded by an offshore shell company tied to Meghan, and the attempt to link the claim to royal inheritance or scandal had hallmarks of deliberate destabilization, not a search for truth. By mid-morning, the public narrative had flipped. The media offensive wasn't contained to the UK. International outlets from the New York Times to Le Monde and Der Spiegel picked up the story within hours, citing the DNA results and financial disclosures. By 1 p.m. GMT, the following consequences had already taken hold. Netflix issued a statement terminating all remaining production agreements with Archwell Productions, citing material concerns over internal conduct and reputational risk. Spotify removed all promotional banners related to Meghan's podcast and suspended payout discussions. WME, the powerhouse Hollywood talent agency representing Meghan, confirmed the end of her client relationship, effective immediately. Sources close to these firms revealed that while they were prepared to support Meghan through past controversies, direct evidence of orchestration in a legal hoax targeting a government-adjacent institution crossed a red line. This wasn't public relations mismanagement, this was operational sabotage, one executive at WME told The Hollywood Post under condition of anonymity. Despite the media firestorm, Meghan Markle remained silent. Her legal team, when contacted by multiple outlets, declined to comment. No statement was issued via Archwell or her private representatives. Palace insiders say she has been isolated at the Montecito residence, where internal staff report a flurry of document shredding, safe access, and deletion of personal drives in the 48 hours following the press leak. Princess Anne, when asked if the royal family intends to pursue legal action, delivered a carefully measured reply during a closed-door committee update. "We do not seek vengeance, but we will protect the dignity of every citizen the monarchy represents, including ourselves. The law, not scandal, will handle what comes next." The most symbolic break came from within. That same afternoon, Prince Harry filed divorce proceedings through his UK legal counsel, citing irreconcilable breakdown of mutual trust and ethical alignment. He also returned his wedding band to the crown jeweller, who had crafted the ring using Welsh gold, a tradition reserved for senior royal unions. It was a quiet gesture, no press, no speech, but for the palace it marked the final severing of personal complicity in the plot. Harry's cooperation with Anne's investigation, his voluntary forfeiture of joint assets, and his agreement to support custody reassessments for Archie and Lilibet are now documented in a sealed court file. According to one palace source, this is not the story of a man betrayed by a woman, it is the story of a man choosing legacy over loyalty. By the afternoon of February 4th, the palace's strategy had shifted from exposure to containment. Princess Anne's Crisis Committee, now operating around the clock, authorised the final procedural stage, transferring its intelligence package to British law enforcement agencies and financial regulators, while simultaneously sealing off every remaining channel through which the Lindsay narrative could be revived. This was no longer a media operation, it had become a judicial one. At precisely 6:15 in the morning, Metropolitan Police officers executed a provisional arrest order at Claridge's Hotel in Mayfair, where Lindsay had been staying since mid-January. She was escorted through a service entrance, flanked by investigators from the Serious Fraud Office, and transported to a secure interview facility in central London. Officials emphasised that she was being questioned in relation to falsified documentation, misrepresentation, and suspected financial inducements, not as a political actor. Princess Anne refused to comment on the arrest directly, but a palace aide confirmed, "The Crown has supplied evidence. The courts will decide the rest." Within hours, sources close to the inquiry indicated that Lindsay had retained new legal counsel and begun cooperating with authorities, offering to surrender communications records, contracts, and draft statements prepared before her public appearance. At the same time, the monarchy moved swiftly to neutralise the second destabilising figure in the scandal. Shortly after 10:30 in the morning, Prince Andrew departed Royal Lodge under escort. 2 vehicles transported him north toward a private estate in Scotland, where he is expected to remain indefinitely without ceremonial duties, public funding, or discretionary security privileges. The palace framed the decision as administrative, not punitive. Anne's internal memorandum, later summarised to parliamentary liaisons, described the relocation as a protective withdrawal intended to prevent further reputational erosion during an unresolved investigation. Andrew was barred from issuing independent statements and instructed to route all communications through Royal Legal Counsel. No medals, uniforms, or official insignia accompanied him. One senior courtier characterized the move bluntly: "He has become radioactive. The institution cannot afford uncertainty." Across the Atlantic, consequences multiplied with alarming speed. Former allies withdrew in rapid succession. Brand partnerships dissolved. Litigation notices began arriving at the Montecito residence from production companies alleging breach of contract, misrepresentation, and reputational damage. Though Meghan's attorneys maintained that their client denied wrongdoing, multiple American firms quietly froze escrow accounts linked to her ventures pending regulatory review. Anne's team confirmed that civil actions were now underway in both the United Kingdom and the United States, though the palace stressed it was cooperating with authorities rather than initiating prosecutions itself. Behind the scenes, staff at the California estate reportedly resigned in clusters, while private security arrangements were renegotiated at reduced scale. One individual close to the household said, "Phones stopped ringing, invitations vanished. It was like watching someone fall out of orbit." In London, Prince Harry formalised what Anne had hinted days earlier. Court filings submitted on February 4th confirmed that he had completed the first procedural step toward divorce and requested financial separation pending forensic accounting of all shared entities. He declined to make a public statement. Instead, he boarded a commercial flight from Los Angeles to Heathrow earlier that morning, passing through standard arrivals rather than royal facilities. Observers noted the absence of aides, motorcades, or diplomatic protocol. His cooperation with investigators continued, including surrendering personal devices and authorizing auditors to review joint tax filings from the past 3 years. A palace legal advisor summarized the significance. "He has placed himself on the side of disclosure. That is not symbolic, that is contractual." By nightfall, Princess Anne convened one final closed session with Prince William and senior constitutional advisors. Their conclusion was precise and deliberately restrained. The Lindsay episode would be treated not as a scandal of lineage, but as a case study in attempted manipulation of royal identity for financial leverage. No personal verdicts would be issued from the throne. Only evidence, only process, only law. As one briefing note circulated inside Buckingham Palace concluded, "The institution survives by refusing spectacle. We do not trade in outrage, we trade in records. Dashes Plancus, when this was new, the essential stages. It's not 44. As the British public awakened to headlines confirming that the so-called Yacht Baby scandal had collapsed under the weight of forensic truth, the final stage of the royal family's operation began, a public closure defined not by spectacle, but by institutional clarity. At exactly 7 a.m., Buckingham Palace released a formal statement, brief, deliberate, and unambiguous. The final sentence became an instant headline across the globe. In accordance with the findings of law enforcement and independent forensic review, the individual known as Lindsay has been found to bear no familial relationship to any member of the royal household. The palace's statement was grounded in science. The DNA test conducted under police supervision, with samples discreetly obtained from Lindsay's hotel room, was verified by 2 independent laboratories, one in London, one in Edinburgh. The results were clear: 0% genetic match with Prince Andrew, 0% genetic match with Meghan Markle. Both results were signed off by certified molecular biologists and delivered to legal counsel under chain of custody protocols. As one royal medical advisor noted during an internal debrief, the margin for error was statistically insignificant. This was not a familial anomaly, this was a fabrication. Alongside the biological evidence came the documentary collapse. Investigators presented a detailed timeline of financial transfers, communication logs, and burner phone messages originating from Archetype Consulting LLC, the Delaware-based shell company linked to Meghan Markle. Among the most damning entries were a $50,000 payment memo dated January 15th, labelled Phase 2 Deployment, Legal Activation, and a burner phone text from Meghan to a UK contact on January 31st stating, "Wait for Andrew to collapse completely, then release the DNA." Cross-referencing these entries with Meghan's travel device IP logs and financial control of the account, the Crown's internal legal advisors concluded that she had both knowledge of and operational authority over the payments to Lindsay's legal team. Notably, however, the palace refrained from issuing any direct accusation of criminal intent. The official line was diplomatic. Findings suggest the orchestration of a reputational pressure campaign centered on falsified identity and unverified narrative. The matter has been referred to appropriate legal jurisdictions for further review. On February 4th at 2:30 p.m., Princess Anne convened the final meeting of the Royal Strategic Committee. Present were Prince William, Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker, Sir Julian Marrow, and senior communications and legal advisors. The conclusion was reached by consensus. No further public statement would be issued by individual royal family members. All ties with Meghan Markle, personal, financial, and representational, were to be formally and permanently severed. All legal representation related to the Sussex household would transition to external firms independent of Crown support. As a symbolic measure, Princess Anne ordered the sealing of Meghan's former royal wardrobe and archives, and Prince William requested that the financial audit of Sussex-related charitable funds be made available to Parliament upon completion. "We are not afraid of sunlight," William reportedly told the committee. "Our power is in transparency." Later that afternoon, Prince Harry attended a private audience with King Charles III at Windsor Castle. No press were present, no aides. The meeting lasted under 45 minutes. Though the full content remains confidential, a palace source disclosed that the king expressed personal regret, paternal affection, and constitutional expectation. Charles did not offer reinstatement of any title or role, but he confirmed that Archie and Lilibet would remain under royal protection and that Harry would retain civilian legal standing within the UK, contingent on continued cooperation with ongoing financial investigations. In a deeply symbolic gesture, Harry left the meeting wearing a simple navy suit, no medals, no insignia, no royal seal, a man not erased but recast. As the Crown drew its line in the sand, consequences began taking root elsewhere. US federal investigators launched a joint inquiry into Archetype Consulting LLC for potential violations of cross-border fraud statutes. The Crown Prosecution Service confirmed it had opened a preliminary file on foreign influence operations involving falsified identity and intent to extort. Lindsay, now cooperating under a witness protection clause, submitted a 42-page sworn deposition admitting her role in the hoax, detailing payment instructions, message scripts, and rehearsed statements, none of which she claimed originated from her. Though Meghan had not yet been charged, multiple legal experts now predicted that civil and possibly criminal proceedings were inevitable, especially with financial documents and burner phone metadata establishing her central role in the operation. As one former Crown barrister put it, if this were anyone else, the arrest would already be underway. But the Crown understands diplomacy and patience, and that's what separates it from its enemies. Don't to the rhetoric. At 5 p.m, a junior footman was seen delivering a final red box to Princess Anne at Gatcombe Park. Inside, the sealed Lindsay case file labelled "Classified Resolved." Signed and countersigned, Anne placed the file into the Royal Archive under restricted status, alongside records of prior scandals from the abdication crisis of 1936 to the Diana inquiry. Outside, the Union Jack flew undisturbed in the quiet wind. A palace source summed up the legacy of the moment. In the end, the Crown didn't retaliate. It revealed. And in doing so, it preserved something far more powerful than image: credibility.